Good evening. Thank you all for joining us for the Adopt-A-Cow Beef Curriculum webinar. I'm Christine Wood. I'm the 4-H STEM Field Specialist for SDSU Extension, housed out of the Sioux Falls Regional Center. And I will have Madison introduce herself.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. My name is Madison Kovarna, and I am a beef nutrition field specialist with South Dakota State Extension. And I am based out of our Watertown Regional Center. So that's where I kind of spend a lot of my time. And I'm excited to share with all of you our Adopt-A-Cow curriculum that Christine and I spent a lot of time putting together, and hopefully can explain it well and you guys can implement it not only in your classrooms, but I see some 4-H people on here too, and potentially in your 4-H programs.
So the Adopt-A-Cow program came out of originally a partnership that we had with one of the dairies in the state of South Dakota. So we started with the Adopt-A-Cow dairy program. And we had a lot of people interested in doing a beef version of it since beef is our primary livestock in the state of South Dakota. And so they were requesting it. And when we sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So we thought that that would be something that would be very beneficial to add. So we kept our dairy for kindergarten through second grade and added the beef for third through fifth grade to help incorporate ag education into our elementary schools while being able to provide things that match the math standards, some of the science standards. With the beef curriculum, we also hit some of the social studies standards. Madison, do you have anything?
No, the only thing that I would add is when we were creating this program and this curriculum that goes with it, we really tried to make sure that it gave students and educators alike a very realistic view of beef production within the state. So, what the kids are actually learning is very real life. We tried to not sugarcoat anything. We really wanted these kids to be able to learn what's going on in our state and really get a real life view and grasp on what's happening. So when they drive by and see the cows on the side of the interstate or wherever they might see them, that they can recall on these lessons. Or for the kids who do have cattle at home, they can kind of start to understand why they do the things that they do and be able to advocate for our industry out to the people who may not know.
Madison, you want to go ahead and go to the next slide? So each of our lessons, we have worked to incorporate the South Dakota education standards for third, fourth, and fifth grade. However, we have also built them so that they can be standalone activities or they can be done in a sequential order. So that means if you have an outreach event that you want to pull an activity from, you can do just an outreach event. For our 4-H staff, many of them are using them for their youth livestock literacy activities. We have some ag educators that are going to pull some of the activities and lessons to be used in their high school courses. We also have some potential to be able to take some high school students and use these activities to teach in the elementary school. So you're getting some peer-to-peer interaction with that as well. To help make it adaptable for various settings, we have tried to break the lessons down into 20 to 30-minute segments. This works a lot better. I know for our after-school audience, we did test with a couple different after-school programs. And for them, when they have a 20-minute section of time, they can go through and pull a lesson and do it over 3 days. And so that is one of the things that you'll see in each of the lessons is the breakout of the time for the individual components.
Oh, there we go.
In addition to having the general lesson plan, we have a PowerPoint built for educators to utilize for each lesson. Within those PowerPoints, we have lots of notes, so you don't have to be an expert on any of the beef information, history, anything like that. This will shows you a PDF that you can print out to go with each lesson that shows the PowerPoint slide as well as the notes that go with that slide.
The one thing that's really nice about these notes is I helped build this curriculum, but inadvertently I am a beef person. So a lot of the teaching aspect has been something that I've been learning as I've been teaching this to students, 4-H, kind of all ages of kids. And these notes I've been referring to, I actually just taught this is from lesson 2 about genetics, and I use these notes to teach some third graders about genetics. Because while I am familiar with the beef side of things, sometimes explaining the basics of like what is a trait escape me. So the notes, even for those of us who made it, are extremely helpful, and I'm glad that we have them available for all of you to pull down and access and be able to feel a little less intimidated by a brand new batch of curriculum coming out. So I'll talk a little bit about lesson 1. So lesson 1 is really about history in South Dakota that not only attributes to beef production, but also it fits fifth grade standards for history. And within here, we talk not only about the different treaties that happened, but we also talk about the rivers that they had to utilize when they come in. We have a fencing activity that comes in as well, so we can fit in some additional math with them calculating the area of a fence and how much of each of these things they might need and how much that might cost back when this open range was happening, and allowing them to kind of see the difference of what it cost then versus now. And we also built in some escape rooms, which I'll have an example if we have some time we can go through. There's a 2 lock short and condensed version that we put together for this for you guys to be able to see. But we did make escape rooms. And then the other activity that we have with this goes really heavily into branding. So branding is a big part for our Western Dakota producers on the other side of the river from me over here in Watertown. But we actually teach the kids how to read brand language, and they get to create their own brand with a partner or in a small group that they'll utilize for the remainder of these lessons if taught all together, so that they can create their own ranch and move forward with that. So they not only learn brand language, but they also get to learn the different locations of brands and the significance of those locations, and potentially how some brands can be very similar but put on different locations, all of the things. So that's been really fun for the kids to dive into the history with this one. We did build it to fifth grade standards, but there are things that you can easily pull down and teach to those lower grades. I am teaching this in a third grade classroom in Coleman Egan schools, and we mainly focus on the branding activity. So they still get the big picture of the history of beef in South Dakota, but we don't necessarily get into those higher level South Dakota history standards that the fifth grade get into. And Christine, before I move on to the breakout rooms, is there anything that you wanted to add to this slide?
Yeah, so just kind of a note, Madison listed off a lot of components to this lesson. One of the things that you'll notice as you start going through the curriculum is we have a base lesson built, but we have a lot of fun add-on components. And so with this lesson, there is a video that they watch. They talk about branding, and that video is a South Dakota Public Broadcasting video that walks through the history. So it talks about the open range. It talks about the different treaties to hit those South Dakota history standards. And then the main activity is that branding activity. However, we do have the bonus activities, which is the math lesson regarding designing the fences. And then there is the South Dakota history review component, which is the escape rooms. And with those escape rooms, we have a condensed version for our younger kids. And then we have an extended version, which actually hits on those South Dakota history standards that talks about the treaties, the different reservations, the open range, and those types of things. And those bonus things are throughout the curriculum for each lesson. They don't have to be done with a specific lesson. The other fun thing that we have built into each lesson is we give a recommendation of 2 books that would be a good addition to be read alongside or at a different time to kind of help facilitate that learning beyond the day that you're doing that lesson.
So I can, Christine, if we want, we can go through the escape rooms now. I can switch my share, or would you rather do that more towards the end? Totally up to you.
Let's do the escape room at the end, but this
Perfect.
is our escape rooms are all housed within the platform called Breakout EDU. And so those are embedded in the lessons. You can either do them as a large classroom or you can assign them to your students to be able to do in a computer lab. And so this is what the beginning of them looks like.
The one thing that I really have appreciated in creating these escape rooms is that we did make this condensed version, which is a lot, there's a fewer locks in it than the one that goes through all the standards. So my third grade class had a lot of fun last year going through one of these lessons. So they're definitely a break from the normal for them. And it's been really cool to watch them really get in thinking about how to solve these different locks. So I'm excited to be able to show you some examples of the locks that we created. Let me. So this is the branding lesson part that we teach them in this lesson one. So we keep it fairly simple for them, with the fact that we tell them in South Dakota that you must can have a brand that consists of 2 to 3 letters, numbers, or symbols, and then give them the list of letters, the numbers that they can use, and some symbols that are acceptable symbols. And then I basically turn them out and let them go through these, um, and create a brand that meets these requirements. They share with the class of what their brand looks like. And one of the activities that can be done with this as well that I've done is we actually gave each group one balloon per student, and they actually wrote their brand on that balloon. And we went out to the gym and we had all of them put them in the center of the floor and pretend like they were ranchers that went on vacation. And then they came back and all of their cows were all over the gym. All those balloons were all over the gym. And so then they had to work together, much like our producers do, to get the cattle back to the correct ranch. And they really started to understand how those brands help them get the correct cows and the correct cattle back to the correct owner. And in that activity, we talked to them also if they were not branded or marked or identifiable in any way, that potentially we could have mixed up cattle, or we potentially could have stolen some. So it's kind of a fun activity to let them start to understand the importance of this practice that we have here in South Dakota. And it's fun to see their creativity with this part of the lesson and creating their brands and explaining why they did them the way that they did.
Okay, so then from there, we go into our lesson two, which our lesson two was probably the most challenging to create, but the most diverse. This lesson, we begin talking to our kids about cattle genetics and why certain calves look the way they look. Within this lesson, we have them looking at themselves, looking at their peers, identifying, different traits that they may have related to eye color, hair color, and looking at family members who might have similar eye color, might have similar hair color, and talking about how those genetics are passed amongst family members. Then we relate that back to cattle and how the same thing happens with cattle. We have 4 versions of this lesson. So our very, very base lesson is what you see in the worksheet in front of you. We have and I think we'll look at those later, but we also have more advanced ones that can be used with our middle school and high school students. So with this, our younger kids are given a bull and a cow, and they use a dice to figure out what their calf would look like. So for this one, they would roll their dice to figure out what kind of markings they'll be receiving from their bull, what kind of markings they'll receive from their cow, and then based on that, they'll see what their calf looks like, and then they get to color a calf. Madison, if you want to hit next. So then this is the next version of the lesson where they actually get to talk about the Punnett square. So it gets a bit more challenging, depending on what grade you're teaching, whether your school has covered Punnett squares or not. This would be the next step of that worksheet where we give them a completed Punnett square, and based on their roll of the dice, they get to identify what their calf's traits are. Madison, the next one. And then the next version is we give them the cow calf or the cow bull pair, and they have to complete their Punnett square. And then the next one for the more advanced version.
I don't know if we have
We
pictures of
don't have
that
that
in
on the
here,
PowerPoint.
Christine.
So
Mm-mm.
for we take this and make it a challenge harder by giving them a bull book and a cow book, and they have to go through and pick their bull and cow. And based on that, they complete this worksheet and fill out the Punnett square to figure out what their calf would look like based on the roll of the dice.
Lesson 3 is our one that goes more into calf health and overall herd management. So we not only talk about with newborn calves, they get to watch a video with a vet checkup in this. So we had a large animal veterinarian give a newborn calf a checkup so they get to see all of those things that we're doing to make sure that these calves are healthy. But we also talk about ear tags in this example. So our producer that housed our cow calf pair for this year's videos, they actually went through and talked about how they label all of their tags, and then the students get a chance to make their tags. And this kind of plays off of lesson 1, where we talk about branding for our East River folks who maybe are not branding as much, or if at all, they're more familiar with these ear tags. So they can kind of see and create that as well. And then arguably the funnest part, but also probably the one that gave me and Christine the most headaches, was creating this moo management game. And this is a game that allows youth to go through being a cow-calf producer. They get to go around the board, and there are opportunities to buy cattle, there's opportunities to sell, there are scenario cards that they can draw. They get to go through a calving season and a weaning season with some scenarios there of potentially based on how their dice roll goes. If all of their cows calve, if only 50% of them do, when they get to weaning, how many of them were bulls, how many were heifers. So we really allow them to go through all aspects of it. And the other biggest part of this game is the vaccinated versus unvaccinated cattle. It is still a very hot topic within the beef industry about utilizing those type of management strategies, and we wanted those kids to be able to make those choices and see how it maybe plays out for them. So some of the scenario cards go off of whether their herd is vaccinated or not, and if they aren't, this is the situation that happens, and if they are, this is the situation that happens, so that they can start to go through and make those decisions as they walk through this game. And it's been a lot of fun to create this and watch it be played. They get to learn money skills as well with the money transferring between buying and selling. And there's some scenario cards where they have to pay the vet to come out because their cattle got sick. So it's kind of a lot of real life experience in this one game that they can play. It takes about an additional 50 to 60 minutes to play it, but definitely something fun to break out on indoor recess day or as a reward to watch them kind of work through this game. And it was really fun to make. And I don't know, Christine, do you have anything to add to the game piece?
Well, not necessarily on the game piece. Something that I didn't mention on lesson 2. Lesson 2 is when the kids are introduced to their adopted calf for the year, which is really the name of where the name of the program came from. So we have worked with a local or South Dakota based producer, and they get to hear them introduce this cow and calf pair. And so then throughout these lessons, they get to see this calf grow. And so the picture that you'll see here is our producer for the year. And the kids get to follow the calf from essentially newborn until about 6 months. And so that is going to happen throughout these lessons. With this activity, the game is the bonus activity. There is an activity in here that is kind of a story that walks kids through what happens when a calf is vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And so they're given two calves. So they get to learn that through a story before jumping into that game piece. This lesson also has a video with one of our local veterinarians where she does a calf checkup. And so they get to listen to a vet and see some livestock careers and see how that veterinarian does a newborn calf check. So then lesson 4 we start talking about energy. And so we talk about how the fact that, we are really active people. The kids we work with, they like to run, they like to play, but they need energy to be able to do that. And so we start a conversation with them about how they get that energy. And we primarily try to get them to talking about, what they eat, and how that provides them energy. And then we ask them about whether they could eat grass and whether that would fulfill their needs for energy. And most of the time, your kids are going to say, no, we can't eat grass. And then we bring the conversation around to the fact that cattle can eat grass. And that is because cattle have special stomachs. And this lesson, we have a video with Madison and one of our special cannulated cows at the SDSU beef unit. And Madison walks the kids through the 4 compartments of the stomach. Madison, do you want to talk about what a cannulated cow is and how you kind of use that to teach the kids?
Absolutely. So the cannulated cow part of this lesson actually came from a experience that I have teaching our freshmen at SDSU in our introduction to animal science classes. And they get to come out to our cow calf education and research facility just outside of Brookings and get to experience a one-on-one interaction with our cannulated cows. And a cannulated cow, essentially, ours have a basically almost a porthole is the best way to explain it, into one of the largest compartments of their stomach. So it's called the rumen. And with that, it really allows them to see just the massive digestive system that these animals have to be able to utilize things like grasses and hays to get energy. And so that experience for a lot of those college freshmen is really eye-opening. And I really wanted to offer that same eye-opening opportunity on a much lower level to these third through fifth graders. So what we actually do is we bring that cow up and we filmed some video of her. She is able to be just like every other cow in the herd. She still can raise a calf like everyone else. She spends time with all of her friends out in the pens and in pasture and does all the normal things. In fact, she's probably one of our more bossy, spoiled girls out there. She gets a little extra special treatment just for the extra job that she does. But the kids actually get to see what that animal looks like. And we walk through all the 4 compartments. And within this lesson, we have the opportunity for materials that can be purchased that mimic the textures of these 4 compartments. So Christine's holding them up, but those 4 compartments have very different textures. And one of the things I really wanted kids to learn was a tactile experience of what if I tell them that the reticulum has a honeycomb shaped pattern for them to actually make the mind body connection there. So we actually gave them a honeycomb shaped ice cube tray so that they can feel those different shapes. And then the rumen has a shag carpet like feeling. So we gave them like a microfiber duster with all those little fingers that some people use to dry their cars. The omesum has a lot of folds and little tiny nubs. So if anybody's ever seen those knobby balls, a lot of times they're like a yoga ball type thing. We gave that so the kids can fold it up and then feel those little nubs. And then the abomesum is the final one, and it's smooth and slippery, and we gave a silicone mat. So all of those, we provided the links or similar pictures so that educators can utilize those items within the classroom to teach this. And then at the conclusion of that cannulated video, we actually followed the rumen fluid that comes from the cow, which is essentially just water and all of the microbes that live in the rumen that ferment the grasses and things that she eats in that natural digestive process into a lab. So the kids actually get to see the beakers and the incubators and all of those fun things. So it really gives them a full circle look at into what research happens with these animals, but also gives them a very real life looking into what their stomach looks like and how cattle are so much different than us in that respect.
And then
The,
they get to finish up that lesson by doing a relay race. So they get to put their energy in motion, and we give them cards. So for our younger kids, it's pictures only. But for the older kids, we also give them the type of energy, and they do a relay race that they have to put that energy process into the correct order.
So the fifth lesson, what we really wanted them to understand is that not only the beef life cycle, but how cattle size with respective age differs so greatly from humans. And we also wanted them to be able to see the difference between the two avenues that cattle can take, whether they're returning back to the herd to be used for breeding to create the future generations, or if they're going to be sent for a market avenue where they're going to produce high quality protein for us to grow. And they relate that back to the previous lesson of that energy transfer of that final part of beef giving us energy to move. So we talk about with the kids how a newborn calf and a newborn baby are vastly different in size. Then they get to see kind of compare that through their whole life. So then we ask them, a lot of them, if they have any younger siblings, to imagine. I always ask them to imagine if their sibling was 1,200 pounds when they were a year old. And you, of course, get a lot of shocking expressions and no way, that's impossible. But then we show them this, and they really get to see that cattle do mature and get to a much larger size much quicker than we do in a very short period of time. The other thing in this lesson that was super important for me to make sure was expressed correctly was the difference in nutrition for our breeding animals versus our market animals, which you can see below that we brought up one of the tables to just show kids the difference in nutrient content of each of these diets. So they get to see that our feedlot cattle get more protein because we need them to put on more muscle versus our breeding cattle who just need to maintain their condition. And then the other big change is where their carbohydrates are coming from. So our feedlot animals are getting their carbohydrates mainly from grains, so starches and sugars, really high energy diets, versus our breeding cattle are getting a lot of their carbohydrates from fiber, from our grasses and hays and silages and other feed sources like that, so that they gain at a much slower rate. So we really wanted to make that super clear to the kids of what these different avenues mean. In here, we also have a video that talks about a bull sale. We were able to film a bull sale so the students get a front row seat if they've never been to one before. And we also give them a video of a feedlot so they get to see where both avenues of cattle may go. And these videos actually get played at the conclusion of the lesson. As part of the lesson, they get to create their own ration based on whether they are in if they were a breeding animal or if they were a market animal by a roll of the dice, typically is how it's been best split up of what one they're going to pick. So they get a chance to create those diets, create the little trail mix with all of the food items, which they've changed quite a bit. So I'm not super familiar with what they are now. We worked with Anne Tvedt, one of our group members in this as well. She helped us create a list of foods that closely mimic the things that we are representing them as. So we have a snack that is a good protein source for us so the kids can start to correlate those as well. And in those trail mixes, once they're created to a recipe that we have provided in this lesson, they get to sit and eat those snacks and then learn about where these different classes of cattle are actually going.
And then our last lesson to kind of tie everything together is a lot of moving pieces. We start the activity or start the lesson by giving the kids a bunch of cards that have pictures on them. And we have them try to work in groups and sort the cards according to how they feel they fit together. So some of the cards are gummy bears, jello, crayons, makeup, perfumes, dog foods, leather, shoes, footballs, different upholsteries, things to that nature. And so we give them to the kids and give them about 5-10 minutes to sort them into categories so they can try to figure out how all of these items are related. And then we have them do a group share to say, hey, this is the category that we chose for these items. This is the category if we chose for these items. So they can kind of see how different people think and categorize different things. But then we bring the conversation back to the fact that all of these items could technically be under the same category because every single one of them has a beef byproduct as part of the lesson. To kind of give them an idea that yes, beef is on our table when we eat, but it's also in all these extra parts of our life. So it's in our classrooms, it's in our gymnasiums, all the different places that we are. In the second portion of this activity or this lesson, we do a graphing activity where we have them look at the number of cattle that are produced across the United States. We give them the number of cattle for the top 5 states in the United States, and they have to draw a bar graph and then identify where South Dakota ranks in that. We also give them a map similar to what you see here, and they have to identify where their county is and look at the numbers of their county compared to surrounding counties. So this map right here shows all of the beef producing jobs per county in the state of South Dakota. And so they have to look at their county and where that relates to the counties surrounding it. There's also a map that shows the numbers of beef processors in each county. And so they can compare the two maps and kind of have some conversations related to why they think certain counties would be better for beef production, while other counties might be better for beef processing. So they can look at jobs and the locations in the state based on what is available in that part of the state. The final portion of this activity is reviewing where we started with our newborn calf and the process that it took to get our beef to the table. Through that, we also talk about all the different careers that happen and take part in making sure that our baby calf is healthy, processing our cattle, and cooking the meat that comes to our plates. And so they learn a little bit about careers. A bonus activity that we have built into this is for them to create a small book that is the ABCs of beef careers. And we give them a few letters, but they don't have to do. But primarily for every letter, they have to identify a career that is related to the beef process.
One thing that now that we're at the end of our formal PowerPoint, one thing that I also wanted to hit on again was the fact of throughout these lessons, there's already the activities built in, but we do have a handful of videos that go through their adopted cow-calf pair that pair with the respective lesson that that video talks about. So the first time that they meet their calf, they're learning about genetics. So then they're starting to understand of where the calf maybe got its qualities from of both mom and dad. And then also some of the identification pieces come in the next lesson. We have a check-in with them that is during weaning or but right before weaning time. So they start to see how that calf is naturally becoming more independent from mom. They get to see what he looks like when he's only a couple months old, and how much bigger he was from the last time they checked in. And then we come back after weaning as well to get the capture of both of them. So it's really cool for them to be able to follow through. And that's the one part of this curriculum that I think makes it really unique and stand out is that aspect of they're not only learning in the classroom, they also get a little bit of skin in the game of getting to see and be excited to see where their calf is at, how much he's grown since the last time they've seen them. And I think that's been a really cool piece to develop, at least for me with this lesson. It's just giving them that real life connection and a little bit of pride in what they're learning because they get to see that real time in these videos with this calf that we send back to them.
And one of the beauties of this program is that even though it's built to be feed off of each other, each lesson can also stand alone. So you don't have to do all of 6 lessons. The other thing is if you do the 6 lessons, we have seen a couple different programs that have facilitated this where they create a small group during the first lesson and they've kept those kids in that group for the entire time. And that gives them an opportunity to build their ranch throughout the program. So they start the very first lesson by creating their ranch brand, creating their ranch name, and then throughout they just keep that ranch continuum throughout the lessons. That's not a necessary thing, but it's something fun that I've seen a couple different programs do, and it's added a little bit of impact to the way the program has come to progress. The other thing that we have tried really hard to make sure that everything you need to facilitate all the lessons and all the bonuses are built in. So for example, with the board game, everything is printable. You don't have to have access to the board game. The board games are set up so that they can be printed on an 11 by 17 piece of paper. So you could have, 4 or 5 for different groups in your classroom. All the money and cow cards and all the barn cards are all things that you can print locally or have them printed for you. We also have created some object files. So if you have access to a 3D printer, rather than printing paper game pieces, we have little cow. I don't know if you can see that. Little cow game pieces that you guys can print. There's also files in there that you can print all the different card holders. So you have ways to organize your game pieces and stuff. So we have really tried to make sure everything is there um, for you to be able to not only facilitate this, but have the little extra pieces and make it just as fun for the kids.
Yeah, and I guess as me and Christine are talking here at the end of this PowerPoint, if you have any questions or comments or concerns or whatever may have you, feel free to send them in the chat to us and we can answer them here at the end of this presentation here. So feel free to use that chat feature to share with us what you're thinking or any questions that have kind of come up either throughout this or if you've heard of this program before. Um, Going off of the game, Christine, it's been a lot of fun to not only be able to provide all of those pieces to them in that regard, but also allowing them to print off as many as you can so you can make this as individualized as you want or as group activity as you would like to. With this, we really wanted the flexibility of the educators to be able to decide what works best in their classroom settings. So all of the lessons are thought through in the terms of we wanted to not box everyone in and make them teach it all one way. We really wanted to provide all aspects of the lesson so that if you did have a classroom of that was very small or a small group you wanted to teach to, you can do that. But we also had an after school program that was utilizing it with a much bigger group, and they were able to kind of tailor those lessons to that larger group as well. So we definitely kept some flexibility in there and freedom to make it work for your situation.
And even though the standards are for grades 3, 4, and 5, the lessons can be adapted for beyond that. The one after school program that we worked with this summer, they taught 200 youth, not all at the same time, they had them in groups, but their groups were all K through 5. So they had some of the lessons that they adapted so that their kindergartners could do the activities as well. Madison, do we want to go ahead and do the breakout room while people are
Sure,
thinking about questions? And then after the
sure.
breakout room, since Anna is on, maybe we'll have her give a little information on the Beef to School program as well.
Hopefully you can see this if I am not mistaken.
So when
Um,
you get into the curriculum, there is a link to go to the breakout rooms, and then this is what will come up for you. So each lock has something different. So they'll have a picture, a story, and then at the bottom it will give you a little padlock with either letters, numbers, shapes, arrows, colors. And so that'll tell you what you're looking for within your clues. So for this one, I'll read it out loud, and then if you guys have ideas of what it is, go ahead and type it in the chat. So in 1874, despite the Fort Laramie Treaty, General George A. Custer led an expedition to the Black Hills. During this expedition, he observed herds of bison grazing the abundant grasslands of the southern hills and noted the potential for raising cattle and sheep. It was also during this expedition that he noted the hills were full of a precious metal. His declaration of finding this metal created a rush of people to the area. Anybody have an idea? This is a new letter lock. So if you think you know what it is, put it in the chat box. Aubrey has her hand raised. Aubrey, can you type it in the chat? Will it let you do that?
The chat should be working now.
Awesome. So we have gold in the chat. Madison, can you type in gold? And then it gets submitted, and then the next clue comes up. So
I'll have to
this,
scroll on this one, so if I
okay,
scroll too fast, let me know.
okay. So this one's a little bit longer, and these ones get a little more challenging to do with a full classroom, but I have seen groups use this in kind of like a Jeopardy format where they'll have their students broken up into multiple groups, and then they have a Jeopardy style scoring for it. So in 1877, the U.S. forced the Sioux to leave the western area of Dakota Territory and the Black Hills. This opened the area for enterprising farmers and ranchers. The profitability of grazing cattle on the open range was a draw for many men and helped feed the Great Dakota Boom of 1878. People came from places like Texas, the eastern U.S., Canada, and even parts of the United Kingdom like Scotland. For these people, the Dakota Territory promised miles and miles of abundant grasslands and open range grazing, fresh water, and much more profitable markets. The grass of the Dakota Territory was much better for raising livestock as it had the ability to survive drought and stand well above the snow during the winter. The southwestern part of Dakota Territory has the abundant watershed, home of 6 major rivers that could provide fresh water for livestock. These rivers flow from west to east towards the Missouri River, which flows north to south. Cattle markets in the Dakota Territory were growing as the population saw expansion through mining and homesteading. Beef was also a hot commodity for the military posts in the area. As part of their treaty agreement, beef was also provided to the tribes within the reservations. This is a color-based lock. So, anybody have ideas based on the picture and the story clues of what this color lock would be? You'll notice that we have tried to bold all of the major clues within the story. So the bolded ones within this one would be the 6 major rivers, flowing north to south. Anybody have an idea what the first one would be? Gray. Okay, what about the second one? Purple. Next, orange, yellow. We have two more. What would the next one be? White. And then the only one we have left is blue. Okay. Then when they get to the end of their breakout room, they have this little congratulatory statement. For this one, this is the shorter version, and so they don't actually figure out where their cattle are, but they have found the clues of where they might be. So that is how the breakout rooms are set up. Each breakout room has 5 to 6 locks that can be done for the kids. The after school program, library program, whatever you want to call it, that I worked with used these breakout rooms when they had a little bit of extra time. So if they got done with activities sooner for a session or whatever, they would open the breakout rooms and let the students go through them during that time. Okay, so Anna, since you are on, one of the things that we have really tried to do this year is to partner with our Beef to School team. And Anna is on with us tonight, and I'm going to ask her just to give a quick little here's what Beef to School is. And then when we send out the recording for this webinar, we'll also send out the information about Beef to School.
Awesome. Well, it's good to be on with you all. I've been working with Christine and Madison and our other coworker, Audra Scheel, on this Beef to School project. And we've had two kind of main areas. And so the Adopt a Cow is the educational area. And then what I just put in the chat there is a link to our Farm to School page on the website where you'll find our frequently asked questions about serving beef in school meals. And so that's been the second component to this Beef to School program that we're really trying to support is the cafeteria component to complement the classroom component that you learned about tonight. So in that guide, we've really interviewed several school districts and processors and ranchers that are implementing Beef to School in their local communities and gathered all of the different requirements as well as recommendations in order to make that happen. So we know that farm to school programs can include local food sourcing for schools, hands-on agriculture and education. And so with this Beef to School program, we're excited to be able to offer resources to support two of those three major core elements of farm to school. So we did a couple webinars like this yesterday, and so we will be sharing the recording if you missed those on the same page where you'll find the FAQ document on the website there.
Thanks, Anna. And one of the really cool things that we have done with the partnership of Beef to School and our Adopt a Cow program is we were able to put together a little over 100 educational kits to support the Adopt a Cow program. And those kits were distributed to all of our 4-H educators. And then they were also sent to probably around 70-ish schools. And so those schools were ones that had indicated that they were doing Beef to School or that they were interested in doing Beef to School. We also have a list of schools that are on our waiting list to get education kits if we get the time and capacity to do some more. So there are a lot of programs out there that have access to these kits that have the game boards already printed out. They have all these fun things to do the cow stomach pieces with. And they also have some books that were donated by the South Dakota Beef Industry Council. They donated 3 books for us to put in those educational kits too. So they get to do some of the bonus activities and the extras that we have added into the curriculum. Are there any questions this evening for Madison, Anna, or myself?
While we wait for some to come in, I guess I have found it really interesting and fun to incorporate not only a classroom activity, but also the lunchroom aspect. The coolest thing about the Beef to School to me is that it gets local beef products into classrooms. So students who maybe even know the families that raise beef in their area, they can have that high quality protein in their lunchroom and then also go back and then learn about how that beef got to them. So that's really a whole picture program that I think is super cool for our students here in South Dakota to be able to learn. And Anna and Audra have done a fantastic job putting together the FAQ for anybody who is interested in getting that started in your school district, or potentially if you have started it, there's definitely some good information in there as well. That's been really fun to coordinate both efforts across the board and getting education to our kids.
You know, Madison, since you mentioned that, I'm going to also put a link in here. Audra and I worked with the Department of Ed, who administers the federal nutrition programs, to do a survey to all the schools about Beef to School. And so if you'd like to check that out, it does have a map in there of what locations are, at least in the last school district, we're operating Beef to School programs, doing that local sourcing. So if you want to check that out or interested in seeing if your local community is already doing this, the link is there, and it's the top resource on that page.
Another thing to make note of is right now the curriculum follows 1 calf and 1 cow. It is our goal over this next year to work with another producer or a couple producers and get some more videos to add to this video library too. So ideally every fall we'll be refreshing the content that's here so that as we learn by implementing, we can make some changes, but we can also add new producers, add new calves, and things like that to keep youth engaged. Well, we can hang out here for a few more minutes in case you guys think of questions. However, if people would like to hop off, we really thank you guys for joining us this evening and listening to what we have to share about this program. We're pretty excited to move from a pilot stage and get this pushed out to as many people as we can. There's a lot of fun things with this curriculum.
Sue, I am so glad to see your comment of that you're looking forward to implementing them this spring. If for any reason you have any questions when you start to implement it or anything like that, don't hesitate to reach out. We're always willing to help you get these out to kids. So if anything comes up in the future, feel free to let us know. But it's great to know that people are taking it and using it to educate. So I thank you for that.
And another thing is if we have educators that are interested in facilitating it, but they're hesitant because they don't have the background in beef, please reach out to Madison and I. Depending on your geographic area, we might be able to find a 4-H person or a beef person that could come into your classroom, once a week, once a month to do the lessons. So don't hesitate to reach out if you want to implement it, you just aren't quite sure what that looks like.
Well, I think we're close enough to our 6:30 and I don't see any other questions rolling in. So if anyone wants to hop off, feel free. And I think we will conclude unless there's any last minute burning questions that come through. But I think with that, we will wish you all a good night and hope that you have some good time learning and kind of diving into these lessons as we've had creating them. And we thank you for joining us tonight and taking some time out of your much needed time at home, I'm sure. So we want to thank you for that.